Hello everyone. At the outset, I would like to wish you all a very happy new year 2023. I thank you all for watching my videos and for all the encouraging feedback. I'm Chinmaya and this video is part of my LibreOffice Calc series. And in this video, I will demonstrate how large datasets can be easily visualized in LibreOffice Calc using a very powerful spreadsheet feature called pivot tables. If you have had some exposure to pivot tables in Excel and are transitioning to Calc, you will find that pivot tables in Calc work in a very similar way. If you haven't seriously tried LibreOffice, I invite you to give it a try, as it's a great open source software that gets many new capabilities and updates every 3 to 4 months, and you can use this software and all updated versions for free. I have included the link to the LibreOffice website in the description below, and you can download and install LibreOffice for Windows, Mac, or Linux from the download section of this website. For this tutorial, I'll be using a fictitious data set that has sales data for sale of wines in 4 states of Australia. If you wish to follow along, you can download this data set from the link in the description below. Let's start by quickly examining this data set, which you are now seeing on your screen. Now, before I start describing this data, I would quickly like to point out that if your screen and your menu is different from what my screen looks like, all you need to do is to just simply go to View and then go to User Interface and then just simply click on Tabbed User Interface and just go ahead and press Apply to Calc. So when you do this, you will see these tabbed menu items, and this makes Calc look quite familiar to Microsoft Excel. And people who are transitioning from Excel to Calc or are interested to check out Calc will find it much familiar to work with these tabbed menus. So let me now describe this data set. So this fictitious data set has some standard sales figures for wines sold in 4 states of Australia. It has 8 columns and 611 rows with 1 header row. So we have data on the quantity of bottles or cases sold, whatever you would like to consider. Under the sales column, we have the amount of sale that has been made. Under the part column, we have the bottle label, the bottle that has been sold. These bottles or these wines are further categorized under a group. So you can have wines categorized as Riesling or Merlot or Semillon or Pinot Noir. So these wines are categorized under the group, which is mentioned under the group column. And then the group themselves can actually be categorized as either white or red wine, which is under the type column here. Under the month, we have the date of sale or the month of sale. But if you click on this cell, you will see that what has been actually entered is a proper date when this particular sale was made. Here in the state column, we have the state of Australia where the sale was made. So first 3 sales were made in the state of Victoria. The following sales were made in the state of New South Wales, and then subsequently Southern Australia. So these are the states in which these sales have been made. And the first column is of the sales representatives who have made these sales. And this data is for 2 years, 1997 and 1998. So we have records for 1997 and 1998 and a total of 611 rows of data. If you press Control and then press the End button, you will see that it takes you to the last row, which is 611. And because we have 1 header row, 610 data rows for this particular data set. So Control Home takes you back to the first row again. This data set is not very large because for the purposes of this demonstration, it will help us better understand pivot table operations and make sense of the generated numbers. Later on, we'll use the exact same operations on a very large data set. The beauty of pivot tables lies in the fact that they provide amazing flexibility in analyzing, organizing, and visualizing data at astonishing speeds and give us insights that would otherwise be prohibitively difficult to do. In fact, in my opinion, pivot tables take spreadsheets to an entirely new level that many times borders what I consider the magical. So the real power of pivot tables is in aggregating, compressing, or summarizing tons of data, leading to valuable insights and actionable business intelligence. So let's start and try to see how we can use pivot tables to visualize our wine sales data. So to insert a pivot table, all you need to do is to just click on any cell of this block of data. It's usually advisable to have a quick look through your data if it is possible, and trying to make sure that there are no anomalies in data like empty rows or values missing, etc. But if you do have them, you can eliminate them through the pivot table interface as well. But then all this should be part of one data block ideally. So once you have this data, just click anywhere inside this data and then just go to the Insert tab and click on Pivot Table. So when you do this, Pivot Table tries to select that entire block of data, and it's showing you that it's going to create a pivot table using the current selection, which is your entire data. You cannot scroll down at this stage and see whether all the data has been selected. All you need to do is just come here and press OK. So when you do this, a box opens up, and this is the pivot table layout box. And we can start visualizing our data using the pivot table layout box. If you want to make sure that all the data has been selected, you can just come here and expand the source and destination box right here and see what has been selected. So in this particular case, data from A1, which is this cell, all through H611 down on this particular column. As I have already mentioned that my data has 611 rows, I am absolutely sure that all the data has been selected. If not, I can click here and manually select my data or reduce the data. Say, for example, if I was not interested in all of this data, I can shrink this data and the pivot table will include only those rows. So I'm going to come here and reverse this back. Now what you see here is all the columns that you have here are listed in available fields. So rep, state, month, type, group, part, sales, and quantity. All these appear here. And what you see on the left hand side are 4 boxes. One is for row fields, one is for data fields, one is for column fields, and one is for filters. So I'll explain all this in a short while. The general idea is you're going to pick up something from the list of available fields and drop it in these boxes, and that will help you visualize the data as you want. So let us say I want to find out the sale of wine in every state. So I'll just pick up the state field and drop it in the row fields box. You can drop it in the columns field box also. Then we'll just see a little later on how this is easily possible. And in this box, you usually put in fields on which math can actually be performed. So in this data set, you have 2 such fields. One is sales and one is quantity. So I'm going to pick up sales and drop it here. And once you are done, you can just come here and click on OK. And what you see here now is a new sheet. Your original data is completely safe. Everything is happening on an entirely new sheet. And what you see now is the total sale of wine in each of these 4 states or territories. And it has, in a flash of a second, gone through 611 rows and summed up all that data and brought it here. So you have the total sale amount and the sale amount in each state being displayed here. If you double click on this cell, you can try to type in a number. Say, for example, if I wanted to change this number and type something inside, you cannot do this when you press enter. it'll come back and say you cannot change this because it is part of the pivot table, and it will revert back to the original figure. So while you can type something, you cannot change this figure at all because it is part of the pivot table. Now, if you wanted to find out how calc has reached this figure, we will have to do something special. We'll have to bring back our original pivot table layout box, and we can do that by clicking anywhere in this table and clicking on the insert tab and clicking on pivot table once again. So that is one way of bringing back the pivot table layout box with which we were working before. Alternatively, you can right click on any of these cells and click on properties. So when you do that, you will get back your box, and you can come down here and click on options and then click on enable drill details. So this is an option that you have to check. There are some other options that you can also explore. For example, if you are not sure that your data has empty rows, you can always come here and click on this to ignore the empty rows. You can add filters on columns, as you can see later on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come here and check this enable drill to details on, and then just go ahead and press OK. So when you do this and come back here and click on this or any cell, say for example, if I want to know how we have arrived on this particular figure, when you click on this cell, so it opens up a new sheet and it shows you what it has totaled to reach that particular figure. If you want to verify this, you can total this yourself. You can come here and click on sum, and what you see here is the figure 4939, which is the exact figure that is being displayed here. So you can either save this sheet, right click, move or copy, move it to an entirely different workbook and save it, or otherwise just simply go ahead and delete this sheet, having seen how this figure has been generated. The same can be done for any other entry. Just double click, it opens up a new sheet, and it is now showing you how it has arrived at that particular figure, what all it has totaled. And if you ever want to verify this yourself, you can just simply sum this up manually, and you are seeing the sum here, 27832.5. If you go back to your pivot table, you see the exact same number right here. So I'm going to delete this sheet because I'm satisfied that these numbers are correctly being totaled. If I wanted to sort this data based on the sum of sales, say for example, if I wanted to see the top performing state, if I had lots of data, I would need this automatic sorting. So what I can do is I can right click and go to properties, and I want to sort. So I'm going to come here and double click on state and go to options. When you click on options, you see a sort by box. So you can come here and click on manual, and this opens up this drop down. So click on the drop down and choose sum of sales. We want to sort on this particular figure, and very important not to leave this on manual, but come back here and click on descending or ascending according to your preference. So I'm going to come here and click on descending. And what you can also do is that if there were a lot many categories here and you wanted to see only the first 5 or first 3, you can come and click on the show box and then choose a number like top 3 or top 5, and making sure that the field that is being used is sum of sales. This is what you want to sort on. You can also click on this box and choose to see the bottom 3 or bottom 5 as per your preference. So I'm going to switch this off because I don't have that much of data here, and making sure that I'm sorting by sum of sales, which I could manipulate using the manual option. I have the 2 fields that are seen on the pivot table available here. So I have chosen sum of sales, and then I have chosen descending because I want to see this in from highest number to the lowest number. If you wanted to see it from the other side, you can just choose ascending, and then you can just simply go here and click on OK. So when you do this, just exit out by pressing OK, and you will now see a sorted list which is basically showing you the state that is performing the best in terms of sales is Southern Australia, and the state where there has been least sales is Western Australia. New South Wales and Victoria are having similar sales, but they are far behind than Southern Australia. So you can sort data like this. Let me now just right click and go to properties, open this box once again. What I can also do is bring in another field. Say for example, if I wanted to see the type of wine also, so I can just bring in the type of wine and move it up. So type and state in the row fields and sum of sales in the data field, and I can just press OK. So my visualization changes immediately, and I am now seeing the sale of red and white wine in each of the 4 states or territories that I am working with here. So all I did was just simply opened up my box and bring in a particular field and repositioned it according to my preference. If I don't want any of these fields, I can just grab hold of it and bring it back and drop it here. So that field will disappear from the rows field box. I'm going to bring it back in again and dump it here. Maybe move it up. All these operations are drag and drop. Just go ahead and press OK. So this is what you're going to see. Very quickly, you can see now the sale of red and white wine. It would be interesting to have subtotals here. So I can do that quite easily. Right click, go to properties, open up this particular box and double click on type. You will see a dialog open up here as before. And we are now interested in subtotals. So I'm going to come here and choose user defined and then just go ahead and click on sum and press OK. So as I exit, I now have subtotals for the red and white wine sales. And as you can see, the sale of red wine is much higher as compared to the sale of white wine. So you have interesting insights into data with very little effort. All you need to do is just simply come here and bring in items from available fields and put them inside this particular box. You can add more items in the data field box as long as those items can be total or averaged. That is, they are comprising of numbers on which we can do math. So for example, quantity, I can bring and drop it here. So you will immediately see the pivot table display change and include that data as well. So there is tremendous amount of flexibility in analyzing and visualizing your data. If you are not happy with something, you can just simply take this out and drop it back again and press OK. So you are back again to your data. Anytime that you want to visualize this data differently, just right click on properties and say, for example, instead of type, I want to change the visualization to see the state first and type later. I can do that. So now I'm seeing the sale of red and white wine per state. So you can see that it is very, very easy to do this. If I wanted subtotals, I'll go to properties and then I'm going to double click on state, and then under the subtotals item, click on user defined, click on sum and press OK and OK. So I get sum of sales per state for red and white wine, and I can include subtotals in my visualization. I mentioned earlier that we can have a different visualization by dragging and dropping and changing the order right here. We can also do the same thing by dragging and dropping the column. Just get hold of the column and take it to the left hand side. You'll see this black line here, and you can do the exact same thing by directly dragging and dropping columns. So if I wanted to bring state back again as the top level grouping, I can do that. If I want to bring type as the top level grouping, grab hold of it and drop it. And you can see that each one of these fields has filters. So you can click on these and include or exclude anything that you want. So you can do that quite easily, and this data visualization is going to change. One other important thing is you can say, for example, you want to graph this or chart this, you can just go back to insert and click on the chart button, and a chart will be created for you, and you can see this data as a chart here and include it in some presentation. What you are seeing here also is a filter, so you can come here and choose to see only red wine, for example, so the data changes only for red wine. If you want to see only for 2 states, you can remove those states that you don't want to see data of and then just come here. So you can use these filters to select or unselect data, and the graph is going to change immediately to include or exclude whatever you have chosen. This graph will also change. If I click here, go to insert and click on pivot tables and maybe include something else here. So this graph will automatically change to reflect that change. I've added quantity as well. So this graph will change immediately. If you have a graph like this, it will change immediately to reflect the current state of the pivot table. And what you are seeing now is a comparison of sales and quantity for each state for red and white wine. And you can use this graph and include it in your presentations, etc. So I'm going to get rid of it, just select it and press delete. So this is how you can chart any data. Let me now bring in a third item here. I'm going to bring in the group. So type group state, and I can keep including as many as I want right here. And within a flash of a second, the data visualization is going to change. And I can include subtotals for blend, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Shiraz, and so on and so forth. So you can change a visualization very, very easily by just simply moving the columns, and that visualization changes almost immediately, and you can see your data in a very different way, trying to get insights into your data. Now we can display this data in many different ways. It need not be just simply the sum of sales. We can present this data or display this data in multiple different ways. Let's get back to our pivot table layout boxes here, and let me just make this a little simple. Let me just take out the group and bring it back here. Now it's not necessary that you see everything in rows. You can just simply take one of the items and put it in the column fields box. So if you can put it on top of data, that is much more desirable. So just bring it right to the top and drop it. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this is that if you do this, you get an automatic filter. So that can be helpful. Just go ahead and press OK. So we have type now in the row field and state in the column field. So you will get a different visualization of your data. So you are seeing red and wine, and red and white wine here, and you have the state in the column fields. Right click properties. Let's say we take the type out and bring the group here. So this data visualization will change, and you are seeing state in columns and the group in rows, and all the sum total of those values in each cell. You can see that some data is missing for Merlot in Western Australia. It is not necessary that you see your data as sum of sales figures always. You can always change this in multiple different ways. So just double click on sum of sales here, and as you can see, you can use average, median, max, min. The default is sum, and you can also show this data in the cell with some statistical parameters as well if applicable for that particular data. So sum is the default one, that's why you see sum here, but you can choose something different. You can choose a different function and your data will change according to that particular function. What we are interested here is to see these values in a different format. So just go ahead and click on and expand this displayed value item here, and you will see that the display type is currently normal. If you click on this, you'll see many different options. And one interesting way of displaying your data could actually be percent of total. So if you just click on this, you can come here and click on OK and OK. And what you'll see now is the same data being shown as percent of total sales. So if the total sale was 100, this is what you are seeing here. Blend in Southern Australia contributes 7.38% of that particular total sale. So you can display your data in a very different way. You total up all this, you are having 100%. If you want to sort this in descending order, you can right click as we have seen before and double click on group, and then just simply click on options. So you get this sort by box, go to manual, sort by sum of sales in descending order, and then just simply go ahead and press OK. So you have the same data now in percent being displayed as percent of total, and we can see that 33.6% of the sale, the total sale, is coming from the Riesling group of wines. So that's the top selling group of wines in 4 territories of Australia. Now we can visualize this data in many different ways again. So I'm going to right click and click on properties, and then double click on sales, and then once again expand the displayed value. If I click on it, I can choose something different. Instead of percent of total, I can come here and choose percent of row. So I'm going to come here and click on percent of row, and likewise I can also do the same for percent of column. So I have chosen percent of row and click on OK and OK. So what you are seeing here now is something different, and it is showing you now the distribution for each group of wine. So of the total sale of Riesling, you will see here that Southern Australia contributes 40%, New South Wales 30%, Victoria 25%, and Western Australia 3.97%. So if we are just taking the Riesling group here, this is how the sales for this group of wine is divided. This is percent of row. It provides you a different insight into your data. Now we'll go back again. So come here and double click on sum of sales once again and expand the displayed value here. So if we wanted to compare the performance of these different states with one state, like for example, the best performing state, we can choose to display this data as difference from. So we're going to come here and click on difference from, and we have now 2 other additional fields on which we need to supply data. One is the base field and the other is the base item. So I'm going to expand this and choose this as a state, and I'm going to choose the base item as Southern Australia. So what I'm basically saying here is that I want to compare the sale of wine of other states with this sale in Southern Australia. I'm going to come here and I have chosen difference from, base field is state, base item is Southern Australia. I'm going to come here and press OK and OK. What you are seeing on the screen here is that the Southern Australia column is completely vacant because Southern Australia minus Southern Australia is 0. But the other figures are actually showing you how much in this particular category has been sold when you are trying to compare the sale in this particular state for this group with the sale in Southern Australia. So if you look at this particular figure, it is in the negative, and it is telling you that for New South Wales, the Riesling group has sold 3030 less than what it was sold in Southern Australia. Likewise, here you can see that for Victoria, the sale is 4895 less than the sales figure of Southern Australia, and for Western Australia, it is 11,824 less than what it is for the Riesling group in Southern Australia. So this difference from can be very useful. As you can see here, there are just 2 items here for the state of Victoria in the blend category that have sold more than what has been sold in Southern Australia. All other numbers are negative except for this one and this one. So these are indicating sales that have been higher than Southern Australia for Merlot in New South Wales and for blend in Victoria. So we can display this in other ways also. We can come here and click on properties and double click on sales and then expand the displayed value once again. And instead of choosing difference from, we can also choose difference of, and we can let the state and the Southern Australia remain. So we are trying to find out the difference of from this state, and the base item is Southern Australia. Come here and click on OK. So these numbers change now. For Southern Australia, it is 100%. We are seeing that as compared to Southern Australia, the number of which is treated as 100%, the sale of Riesling in New South Wales, this number is just 76% of this number. This number is 62% of this number, that is the sale of Riesling in Southern Australia. And this number is only 9.92% of Riesling sale as compared to the sale of Southern Australia. If we revert these back again to the original numbers, say for example, go to properties, double click on this, expand on display items, and instead of percent off, if we choose normal, what we are basically trying to say is that 10096 is 72% of 13126. 1302 is approximately 9 or 10% of 13126. So that is what this display is actually showing when we are coming here and changing this to percent off, choosing state, and then choosing a particular state like Southern Australia. So when you click on OK, this is what this number is basically trying to show. Let us just go back again and double click on sums of sales and then click on displayed values, and we can come here and choose something else like running total in. So we can come here and click on running total in, and we can choose the base field as state. So we are going to come here and click on OK and OK. So what you see here is a different display of the same sales figures, and starting with 13126 of Southern Australia. And to this, when we are adding the sales figure of New South Wales, this number then becomes 23223. And to which, when we are adding the sale of Victoria, this number then becomes 31454. And to which, when we are adding the sales figures of Western Australia, this number then becomes 32756. So you can see the increase of sales when a sale value is added to the first column, and you can visualize your data as a running total. So for blend, we are starting with this number. This is what we sold in Southern Australia. When we add to this the sale of New South Wales, this number becomes 11910, and to which, when we are adding values from Western Australia, this is what that particular value then becomes. So this is another way of looking or displaying that particular data. We can go back to properties and then come here and double click on this and expand on displayed value. So this is what running total in state does for you. You are of course free to choose any other base field. You can choose something different entirely. So we can then just come and make this normal and click on OK. So now we are seeing our normal sales right here. Let me now show you something else, something that we can also do. Right click properties. Let me change this and make this a little simple so that you can actually see this in a slightly different way. So let me just bring in things here and let's see what we are seeing here. So we are now seeing the sale of red and white wine in different states. These are the figures. What we can also do is to open up the properties box, and we can bring sales one more time into this box. And we are doing this just to see this data also in a different way. So for the second entry, double click, open up the display value item, and instead of seeing this as normal, we can come here and see this as % of total or anything that you want. Just come here, click on OK. So what you are seeing here now is a second column that is showing you the % of sales, and the first column is showing you the sum of sales. And we have done this by bringing in the sales item one more time. We can bring this one more time and see something else. So we can repeat an item 2 times and display them. Just double click on it, expand the display value, and change the type of display for that particular item, and see that data side by side in 2 different formats. So we can do that quite easily using this little trick right here. Now, I haven't spoken yet about this particular box. So let us say, for example, we are bringing in another group here. And what we can do is, instead of putting state in the row field box, we can bring it and drop it in the filters box. So when we do this, we can just come here and click on OK. And what you are seeing now is the type, group, and sum of sales, sum of %. But what you see here is a filter at the top. So currently it is showing for all the states. What we can do is we can come here and click on this, and instead of all, we can just simply activate one particular state or a couple of states, and then this data is now being shown only for the state of Southern Australia. So when you put a particular field in the filters box here, that field then decides what is being displayed. You can make a choice here, and the entire pivot table is then concentrated only for that particular field, which is the chosen field as indicated by this particular filter. If you come here and choose all, then this data will then become for all the states. So you can put anything in this box here and filter your entire pivot table report based on the choices that you are making here on top of the report. So this is what this particular box also does for you. Let me show you something else. So we're going to open this box. Let me remove this state from here and bring it back here. So this is the data that we are now seeing right here. What we can also do is, if I can just remove this, what happens if we, for example, bring in something that cannot be total. So state is containing only the name of states. So when we bring in something on which math cannot be performed, let's just go ahead and see what happens. So you will find that this is completely blank because you cannot sum up the names of state. It is not something that you can perform math on. But what we can definitely do is go back to properties, and instead of sum, if we double click on this, we can choose count. So we can definitely count the number of times the state figures in some kind of order. So essentially what we are trying to do is to count the number of orders per state. So you can always count something. So for the blend category in the red wine type, 114 orders across different states have actually been made. So this is another thing that we can actually do here, is to count on something that cannot be totaled. Let us bring back our sales here and revert back to the normal display. So now we will see something different. And one of the things that is very useful is that if you have a field that is having dates, you can display it also as a row or a column field. If we put it here, so you can just put this right here in the column fields and press OK. So you are now seeing the sales on a timeline. Okay, so in the first month, so much was sold. In the second month of 1997, so much was sold for the blend category, and so on and so forth, giving you a very detailed insight into this particular data. But what you can also do is to group this timeline as per your preference. So to do that, it's important that you click on any one of these dates that you are being shown here, and then you can click on the data tab and then click on this and expand this to reveal group and ungroup. Just keep pressing these two arrows here. You can also see this from this menu here, data, and you can see group and ungroup. This is what we are basically targeting. So you can just click on any one of these cells and then click on group, which is also available by pressing the F12 key if you don't want to do so many menus. So just select on these cells and then just go ahead and press F12 to reveal this dialog directly. Now by default you are seeing that it is showing you for months. You can change this very easily to quarters and years. If you wanted to, you can do 2 or even more than that. You can do days, hours, minutes if it was relevant for that particular kind of data. What you can also choose is the start and end date of the data that you want to show on the timeline. So automatically it selects the entire data set, but you can change the timeline to manually start on a particular date and end on a particular date. So important one is the intervals that we are seeing here. I'm grouping them in quarters and years rather than show them as months as I'm seeing them here. I can see the sale for every day if I click here, but I'm grouping them in quarters and years. So when I do this, you will see that this data is now summarized per year for different quarters, and for 98 again for different quarters, financial quarters. So you can group this data just simply by clicking one of these cells and either going to data and then click on group, or directly by pressing the F12 function key on your keyboard. You will see all these items here, and you can change this to something different, revert it back to months or etc., whatever you want. And if you want to ungroup it, all you need to do is just simply come here and click on ungroup. So you get back your month-wise data once again. So this is how you can group or ungroup any field, and it is particularly useful for displaying time values. So there are many display options, and you can just keep playing with permutations and combinations and see your display in any way you want. And you can always go back here and click and create a graph. It really doesn't matter how complicated that particular graph is. That graph will actually be displayed and you can use it for your presentations, etc. So let us now try to see how pivot tables can be really very useful if we run them on really large data sets. So I have open data file here of real estate sales in the state of Connecticut in USA. I've given the link to this file in the description box below. Just scroll down and you will see a download button here. It'll download a comma separated or CSV file which we can read. So the moment you click on this file will start downloading, and it is about 100 MB, and it has 1 million records of sale of property starting from 2001 to 2020 for the state of Connecticut. So it has 1 million records, and you can just click on this button and it's to start downloading this file. So once you have downloaded this file, I have already done that, it's 101 MB. So when you double click on this file, it opens in LibreOffice, and because it's a CSV file, it will initially show you this particular dialog. Just click on OK, and this file, which is having close to 1 million records, now then starts opening up in Calc. Because it's a very large file, it takes a little bit of time. So depending upon how good your computer is, it may take a little longer or lesser. So we now have this particular file here, and if I was to press Control and then End, you will see that it has reached the bottom of this particular file, the last entry being 997214. As I have already mentioned in my initial video in this particular series, that by default Calc can open files that have close to about 1 million, that is 1048576 rows, and this is very close to that particular figure. If this file was any bigger, Calc would not be able to load all the data. But one of the great things about Calc is that you can open files that are even having 16 million records. To do that, just come to Tools and click on Options, and then expand the LibreOffice option here. Click on Advanced, and then just press the Enable Experimental Features option, and then go ahead and press Apply and OK. So this may require a restart. So if we can just close all this and start this once again, let us say, for example, Calc spreadsheet, and go to Tools, then go to Options, and then go to LibreOffice Calc and click on Defaults. You will see that there is an option that opens up. It says Enable Very Large Spreadsheets up to 16 million rows. If you are working with very large data sets, your computer must have a lot of processing power. Otherwise, it may take a very long time for pivot tables to analyze that many number of rows or columns. So this is close to 1 million records. Let us press Control and Home to reach the top. I have really not analyzed this data, so this data might have errors that need to be fixed or some rows that need to be removed. So this data would have to be cleaned before it can be used. I'm just showing you a very quick analysis using pivot tables. So this has quite a few rows, date when it was recorded, town, address, and so on and so forth, a real estate sale. And in this particular case, there is one field that is called as property type. So whether it is commercial, residential, industrial, or whatever else, and this sale amount. So let's try to quickly use these two fields. And remember, this is 1 million records, close to 1 million records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the exact same thing. Just click anywhere in this data set and then go to the Insert tab and click on Pivot Tables. And this selects all your data, and you can just go ahead and press OK. So it will take a little time. As you can see here, it's processing 1 million rows. Previously, we were working with just 600 rows. So depending upon how powerful your computer is and how much RAM you have, we now see the same box appear here. And what we can do is we are now processing 1 million rows. So we can just click on property type and bring it into the row field for analysis. And let us take the sale amount and bring it here and dump it here, and let us see what happens. So once we press OK, it takes a little time, but then it comes back processing 1 million rows. It's having some junk data. So this is what we are not really interested in. But what we can do is we can come here quickly and click on this filter and remove all this stuff from here. So we will just empty all these boxes and just pick up the ones that we are interested in. So 2 family, 3 families, single family, residential, public utility, industrial, 4 family, condo, commercial, and apartments. I'm removing everything, including empty rows that might be there, and I'm interested only in this. So when I click on this, I am seeing this data right here, and this has processed 1 million records. And I can right click and go to properties and open up my pivot table box. Because it is to deal with 1 million rows, there is a little time lag. I can double click on property, open my options, and then go to sort by manual and sum of sale amount in descending order, and press OK, OK, and OK, just like we have done before. And after analyzing 1 million rows, it has come back and given us an answer that the single family property type sells the most or has sold the most in the last 20 years in the state of Connecticut. So pivot tables can be really very, very useful, and you can analyze very large data sets in a very short period of time and get very meaningful insights. So I hope this video will get you started on pivot tables. It's a subject on which a lot of material is available on the internet, and you can access that material and then go further in pivot tables. So thanks a lot for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.